Now, I don't mean to get all melodramatic on you, but what you teach that first week of school and how you approach writing with your students, it honestly, it can make or break how things go for the rest of the year. Super melodramatic, I know, but it's true. And I just want to talk today about how to rethink that first week and how to approach it emotionally with your students, and then literally what types of assignments you're going to do with them in order to set them up for success. And I know we have lots of requirements usually. My school, we have to do STAR testing, we have to do this and that, all these things that are required. But so you could take these ideas and fit them in there around all the things that are required so that you can make sure you can get this whole writing program lifted and up off the ground with such success. So, if you are just showing up here and new here, I am Robin Mellum, and I am a teacher and a coach and an author of children's books from Disney, HarperCollins, and Houghton Mifflin. And then I created a writing program called the Structured Writing Workshop. And so I based it primarily on everything that I learned as an author and all the stuff that I learned from my professional editors, which was mind blowing. They were exceptional, and I learned so much in that. I was gone from the classroom for like 7 years, and I would travel across the country, talk to people, and talk to students, kind of see where the problems were. And I came back to the classroom with a whole new plan on how to approach writing. Now, the first thing that you could do to get ready for the year is actually where you back up, and it starts before the year even begins. And this is something that I do every year, and it really is huge and helps inform me what to do with these students this year. So before the first day of school, I always call every family. You can meet with them. Sometimes they come to meet the teacher week or whatever. And there's always one question that I ask them, and it gives me so much insight. And I ask, how does your student feel about writing? And I don't ask them, how well do they write? Or do they struggle with writing? I just ask, how do they feel about it? Because the writing portion it's emotional. It's vulnerable, and a lot of times writing is personal. It can feel like, they just have bad experiences and they were set up for failure, and there's so much emotions. Like, you'll notice when you ask your parents this ends up being like a therapy session once I ask that question. How do they feel about writing? They're like, "Oh." And they'll either kind of go, "Oh, he loves writing stories, he writes all the time," or, he feels like he's bad at it and he hates it. And so I jot down a couple of notes and just kind of get a feel for my whole entire class on the whole, like, how do they feel about writing? And then that allows me to approach it with, okay, we have a highly fear-based class here. Or we have a bunch of go-getters, or we have a big range of half of them love it, half of them hate it, or whatever. It's just everything in between. So I, my approach is kind of depending upon where the students are at when they get to my class. And then if literally calling them or meeting with each family before school starts is not possible, not a problem. You try and get a Google form or whatever kind of way that you can gather information from them and ask it on there. So at least that you're getting this data, mindset data, and it just reminds you before you start your writing program that I'm not just teaching writing, I'm teaching a human being who's coming into this room with lots of past experiences, and I need to keep that in mind. And it's different from how we teach math. Um, they often don't have as much emotion attached to math. There might be a little bit of fear around it, but it's not quite as deep as it can be when it comes to writing. And I realized that when I became an author, that my self-esteem was wrapped up in my writing, my view of the world, how I viewed myself, how I depended on other people to tell me what they thought. It was just I learned so much about how to enjoy writing for writing's sake and not necessarily always for, you know, how many people bought the book, how many people enjoyed it, how many reviews do I have. I had to just completely let all of that go so that I could enjoy the process. And the gift you could give your students is to help them enjoy the process because on their level, like if I'm worried about reviews and sales and all of that, that's similar to a student focusing just on a grade. What does my teacher think? What am I going to get on this? And it's not the best way to learn or to let go and be creative with your writing. It just really stifles you when you're too focused on the grade part of it. So there's a lot of writing that my students do that's never graded because they have to have that practice time. So once they get to class, um, I have them do well, we first do this really cool activity, that's more so like drawing. It's called Icebreaker for Introverts, and it helps your kids, like, start to talk to each other, but in a really low stakes way, and they are adding to a drawing. It's like a this or that thing, and it tells them what to add to their drawing if they choose this or choose that. And then by the end, they choose like a motto or a slogan to add to their drawing. So they do get a little slice of writing that they get in there, and they love coming, like, you'll get to know your kids immediately on that first day just by walking around with your drawing and seeing what slogan they came up with to add to it. That is where you can see some of your students really shine on that first day because you have a mixture of kids who are creative with their writing, and then all of your kids who are really talented with drawing. They often sort of feel like they never get recognized because that's just not a huge part of our curriculum is drawing amazing stuff. And you know this, you always have at least one, if not several, incredibly talented artists in your class. All right, so we're doing the icebreaker thing on that first day. And then by day two, and of course, schedule this however you need to, because honestly, by day two, my school requires us to do the STAR test. So everything gets dropped, blah, 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 whatever. So your second day, you would need to get a baseline of their writing, which sounds really boring. And honestly, it should be. And I'm going to tell you why. Like what you're going to have them do is going to pay off in so many ways next spring. So on day two, I'm saying, I want you to write one or two paragraphs about a time that you were surprised. We kind of talk a little bit about the word surprised, how it could mean you got a puppy or like something went differently than you thought it would. That could be surprising to you. So I give them like a little bit of brainstorming so they can at least come up with something to write about. Other than that, I do not give them any tips. No lessons from me. They have no structure tips. There's no organizer. I'm just like, just tell me about a day you were surprised and do your best. And so this is the magic of it is that you will end up getting, maybe one sentence to a whole page that is completely one sentence. And this will be the ickiest sample that you've ever seen. And it should be. And the reason is because they do this and they just scroll it out. And I'm like, okay. And I give no reaction to it other than, great, thank you. So you turn it in. Um, and I'm happy because I know personally what I plan to do with this piece of writing. And that is two things that I do with this. Number one is it tells me how in depth I need to get when I'm doing warm-ups and when we're doing the power lessons during workshop time. If I know that the majority of them, and I typically in my mind think, what are 80% of my students doing? Because the 80/20 rule applies to virtually everything in life. It's really weird, that whole 80/20 thing, if you want to look that up. So I aim for 80% of them doing what I'd like for them to do. But if 80% of them have no idea what a period is, then that kind of helps inform, what I'm going to focus on. So what I do at the end of the year, which is actually the week before state testing, I give them this exact same prompt. I say, okay, now you're going to write and you're going to tell me about a time that you were surprised. And we kind of talk about it. And then I say, this time I want you to take all the tools that you've acquired in your writing toolbox, everything that you have learned from workshop, and I want you to really dazzle me with this piece of writing about a time you were surprised. Now, the strange thing is that, I mean, I don't know why, maybe it's just me. My students every year, none of them remember that they did this the first week of school. They know I thought they'd be like, "Oh, we did this before," but none of them remembered doing it, which is actually what you want. You want them to feel like this is a whole new fresh activity that they need to do. So they write, and you are going to be shocked when you see the change in their growth. And this will be the best day of your teaching life. Because what I do is I go into I do this in Class Kick because it's easy to just paste things in and I love it. So in Class Kick, they have their own portfolio, and I put in there their original piece of writing about being surprised. And then I go in on the second page, I add in their new one. And then they come to class, and I always do this the day before state testing. And I tell them what I've done, like my secret. Ha ha ha. Guess what, you guys? That assignment that you did this week was actually something you've already done in the past. And they're like, what? I'm like, you did this week 1. And now I want you to open this. And I give them a link and I say, I want you to take a look at what you wrote at the beginning of the year and what you just wrote this week. And they are floored. They're like, their minds are blown. They're like jumping up, like, what? That was me. And they're so embarrassed, but they're so proud of their growth that a lot of times they will run around and show other people like how awful their first response was at the beginning of the year. They're like, "Look at this, it was awful." And then it's the best day that you will have. You will just sit there and giggle and laugh at all of their reactions. It is amazing. And so now let's move on from that writing sample that you've done. And I tell them that the writing program that I run might be a little bit different than things that you've done in the past. And I give them a little hint of the workshop. So I will show my slides that kind of start talking about what workshops are and what is tinkering and what does that mean. And here's the kind of things you might do. And I go through several of those slides, but then I say, but we're not ready to start the workshop yet. You're not ready. And I do that because it's sort of a little teaser of like all the cool things that we're going to do in workshop. But then I tell them, you can't actually do the workshop yet. You need to prove to me that you can do this one particular skill because you're going to need this skill for everything that you do. And we're going to work on that first. And then once I'm happy that we've got that skill down, we will hop into this workshop that we do. And they're like, okay. And so what that assignment is learning how to write with voice. And I talk about writing with voice a lot, but this is the first writing skill that you teach them. It is paramount. It is so important that you start with a voice lesson. If you when you hear what I do with this activity and then you compare it to, okay, we're going to start with what is a claim? What is evidence? What is reasoning? Like they are not ready for that because you remember that phone call that you had with those parents and 80% of them said, "Oh, she hates writing. She can't stand it." You have got to first deal with that part. So when I do voice, I have them do an activity where I show them the couple of skills of like voice means that you're adding in emotional reactions and specific description, but it has to be something that is specific that only that particular character would notice. So voice is not the same in every piece of writing. It depends on who is writing it, and they will often write from a different point of view. So It's not like their personal voice, unless they're writing a personal narrative, it's the character. So I have them do this like silent observation walk around the room, and they have clipboards and they take notes. And what they're doing is they're searching for objects in the room. And I lead them on this um, like a scavenger hunt, I guess, to find the most obscure object they can find. And it shouldn't be like, oh, the lamp that's on the table. It should be this book that's upside down and tattered and hiding underneath the bookshelf. Like something that most people wouldn't even notice when they walk into the room. They want the most obscure object that they can find. And then I show them examples of a diary entry of I write a diary entry of a dictionary that's upside down and it talks about its life. He's not happy. He's got issues. And so, or maybe it was a different book. Maybe it has a, maybe the book has an argument with the dictionary. Anyway, it's in there. It's book based. So, and it's funny. And then they can kind of see, like, oh, we get to write something with attitude. And the cool thing about starting with that is kids are so good at this. I mean, can kids have an attitude? Absolutely. So make it work for you. Allow them to use that skill that they have for something for good. Like this is how you use it. You don't use it to be, disruptive or rude. You use it to write something amazing. And if your object is rude, go for it, right? With a rude voice. Like, what kind of object is this? What's the origin story? Are they happy living here? Do they hate it? Do they feel like no one pays attention to them? Do they wonder if one day they'll win an award for something? Like they've got a backstory. So use your attitude. And it's sort of this particular skill, voice, is sort of like the bell and the Polar Express. It's something that kids can do naturally and easily. And this is the time, starting with 4th grade, perhaps even 3rd, to let them practice with voice because they're so good at it. And their philosophy or their idea of what writing is going to start changing the very first week of school. And they are gonna be like, "Oh," they get so excited that they get to write a diary entry. It's not about themselves. It's about something weird, and they can have a positive voice, a negative voice, a worrying voice. Is it fearful? They love coming up with, like, what kind of object this is and what is their origin story. And then the extra fun part of this is that I tell them when they are doing their diary entry, they cannot reveal what their object is in their diary entry because you wouldn't, if you personally were writing a diary entry, you wouldn't say, "Hi, diary, I am a human and I feel as a human that I blah, 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 blah." You just say how you feel. So you're not going to say, "I'm a broken pencil." You have to leave that a mystery. So what we do then is we share out, and some teachers have told me that the kids get so excited about this that it took a whole period and they went into the next day because they want they read their diary entry, everybody loves it, and they have to look around and guess what the object is. And it is so much fun. And they are listening to all different types of voice writing, and they're intrigued, and they're starting to get to know each other, and they're knowing each other through their writing in a way that connects them. It's not, we're going to write and then we're going to critique each other's work. It's we're going to enjoy each other's writing. And that is how you turn their feelings around about how they feel about writing. You set up activities where they feel connected to each other and they love sharing their work with each other. And it takes a lot of work to get there, so just stick with me and I'll I'll help you learn how to get your kids to, you know, connect with each other through their writing. Okay, and then on from there to the next day, I'm gonna add something in here because this was an accidental extension that I did, and it turned out wonderful. So I always kind of add this in here if you have the time. But one year, there was some training or something I had to go to, and I was absent, and we had a substitute, and so I had to come up with something for them to do, but it was the beginning of the year, and, like, we hadn't really gotten into anything. So I had the substitute show them a video, and it is Jason Reynolds reading chapter 1 from Ghost. And I just had the substitute play that for them and then say, "Hey, what did you guys notice about the voice in that?" And they'd have a conversation about that character and what things that that character is noticing, because that is voice. Whatever that character would notice and care about, that's how you find voice. So his video on chapter 1 of Ghost, amazing. Okay, so then after they listen to that, the assignment that I gave for them to do was to now write another diary entry for your same object. But today their mood has changed. So however they were feeling yesterday, they were feeling a little bit different today. So why is that? And see if you can tweak their voice so that the words and their attitude now matches their mood. So it's a second piece of writing. And then I had them go through and revise it just so I could start to see what their skills were in revision, and gave them some things to look for. Make sure you've got periods and capitals, and then go in there and highlight your examples of voice. So that was like their big assignment to do that next day, which I now add into my routine because it ended up being just wonderful, and they did such a great job with it. Okay, so now maybe you have a couple of days under your belt, 2 or 3 at the most maybe, and, um, instead of hopping right into the workshop, I make sure that I go into the routines that they will be doing every single day, and we can get all the questions answered, and they can see how the procedures work and all that. And one thing that I do is something that I created called ELA Three-a-Day. It's their warm up that they do every day, and there are 3 parts to it. It's up for them as soon as they get into the room, and they do 3 things a day. I One of my students sets the timer, and you won't believe this, but it's true. They set the timer for 5 minutes, and the students do all of these in 5 minutes. I'll tell you why I do that. The first thing they do is sentence combining. So sentence work, sentence structure, sentence elaboration, all that is so huge. And they need to do one every day, and they need to do one perfectly every day. And I use the gradual release model, but I don't use it on like a daily basis or weekly basis. For sentence combining, think about it for the whole year. So you're going to start at the beginning with I give them 2 simple sentences, and they have to just combine those into a full sentence that has a compound. So they're just making a compound sentence. But it's easy because the sentences are there. All they have to do is change the period to a comma and put it in a conjunction. I do require that it is perfect. Like the spelling is perfect, everything is perfect in order for them to earn the point for that one. Because I mean, they actually sometimes they love it in a way because it's sort of calming and soothing that they can come in and just copy down sentences and make little changes at the beginning there, but they're like, "Cool, I did it. I'm writing a compound sentence." So you're getting that, they're starting on this positive note. It will be boring for a while, and it is meant to be boring. Tell them that. It's fine. It's boring. You got to do boring stuff. Now, the second thing they do every day is a language test prep skill. So something, it's a multiple choice, and it's always something from that language section in the standards that we are like, gosh, I'm never going to get to that. So it's like, passive verbs or whatever, all the stuff that's in there that it's just little one-offs and stuff, but we do that skill for a whole week. So then by the end of the week, and they're pretty easy, and that's the other thing is when we're doing warm-ups, I don't make them crazy challenging because what happens is you would end up with kids who don't know how to answer it. And they're like, "Wait, what? What is this?" And then all of a sudden your warm up has turned into like a behavior. So you want to give them multiple choice questions that are, they can be pretty successful with. And then they kind of sometimes they get a little bit more difficult by the end of the week. But I would then have them come up with the rule for this particular skill that they were working on. You at the end of the week, you could say, "Okay, now you've been working on this one for a week. Let's suppose an alien came in here and just got transferred to this school and you needed to catch them up and they didn't know, like, what is a past tense verb? What's the rule for that? Like, how would you, and have them come up with the rule. That's constructivist pedagogy, which I talk about a lot. I'll talk about that more in more podcasts. I love it. Okay, so they've done sentence combining, super boring. They've done a multiple choice question, also kind of boring, but necessary. The third thing they do every day is a quick write. And this they love. It's an image that is sort of a combination of the words and stuff from the previous two questions. And there are other weird images. They're funny or they're serious or they're moody or whatever. And they're going to write a scene based on this image. And so that's where, and I do have information that comes with my warm ups on like what is a scene versus what is a story. And I have a link to a student facing video actually that's on my channel, Right with Robin. And I will link that below. So that will help with like what's a scene versus what's a story. So they don't have to write a lot. Minimum, they do have to have, I always say you got to have like 3 sentences minimum, but the majority of them will just write and write, 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 write. And they love doing it. And it's like their dessert. So I tell them they have to do task 1 and task 2, and then you can do your quick write. And you will find that you have to rein it in because they had such success with the voice thing, right? When they shared out and they got to guess each other's object. And now you have them in the habit of sharing out. See what I'm doing here? So they love it. So this is part of the reason why I have trios where they're assigned in a group of 3 because they're going to start to love the idea of reading their work out loud. And that's where you get an authentic audience. You have other people reading it. They're not writing something for a grade and for just the teacher. So you'll find that they'll want to share this out with everybody and you will want to hear it because it's so much fun. Oh yeah, you want to share it, blah, blah, blah. And then you have, you have like a little bit of a classroom management problem because you have 15 kids with their hands raised saying, I want to read mine, I want to read mine. So I ended up doing, I chose like, I can't remember, it was like 2 or 3 shares were allowed each day. And I ended up doing like a random name picker. So I I think that's what I put. I would write down who I can't remember now, but anyway, or I would pick a number, that kind of thing. Like I couldn't get to everybody. So you could offer that at the end of class, we'll turn and talk to our trio and you can share your quick write out. So give them that opportunity. They will love to read their stuff out loud now. And you need to provide situations where they can do that because that will pay off hugely. Now, if you have the time in there, there's one more thing that I could offer for you to do as far as getting a baseline of their writing is to do some change my mind prompts. And this will help you get a baseline for their argument writing. But you could do the same thing. You could kind of keep this and then show them later how they're much better at writing arguments. So I have some prompts that are like, should school start later in the morning? And then they write yes and why, or no and why, or both. I actually have them fill out both sides of an argument. And then again, when they do their argument essay, you could do the same thing. You could post their argument writing they did that first week with change my mind prompts and then put it next to their argument essay. And then we'll be like, wow, I'm amazing. All right. So now you've gotten through your first week. Your students know that workshop is coming, that they needed to graduate from this voice lesson and that you've launched your daily ELA warm-ups and everything is smooth and we're good to go. And so now they've got this sneak peek that we're going to be working on these 6 power skills during your workshop. You're going to have this independence and this choice, and now you've graduated, and we're going to launch the workshop. And I have them decide if they would like to have a leadership role in the workshop. So some of the teachers in the Facebook group are coming up with ways to get the students to apply for a job. So that's one option you could use. I've done it in the past where I've just had a Google slide with the title of the job and what they have to do. And then they hopped in there and they wrote their name under each job that they would like to have eventually. And then I just picked them and highlighted them if they did the job. And then that way that would sort of mark them off so I knew who was left to take a job over. So they love having leadership roles. And if you teach 8th grade, just kind of play them out, see how do they respond to all these different types of activities that first week. If they're super into it, then do that with them as well. If they're still a little hesitant with you, this is any grade, but 8th grade, I would not give the 8th graders leadership roles yet. I would start the workshop where you lead everything. And then once they get into workshop and they realize that they actually really like it, then offer them, hey, I would love for some of you to help take this over. Can I have a timer and a leader and a co-cat, whatever you want to do? And they'll be all in. But you do have to give them a little bit of time to kind of grow to love what it is that you're doing. But they will. I almost 100,000% promise you that they will. So if you haven't done this type of thing in the past, think of this as a writing reset button, a reset for yourself and for your students coming in, and the excitement that you might be feeling knowing that they are going to start to love writing. By the end of the year, 90%, because not all of them, but 90% of my students, when I give them another survey and say, what was your favorite thing to do this year? 90% said writing. And think about that compared to that conversation that I had with their families at the beginning of the year, where the majority of them said they hate it. How cool would that be if you could turn that around for 30-something students? What a gift that is. So you can start your year off with, you can confidently say to them, you might feel a little hesitant about writing, but I'm going to make a promise to you. And I say this to them straight up. I'm going to promise you something. I'm going to promise that if you do the activities that I assign, if you listen to the lessons, if you try, if you follow along with what I'm telling you, I promise you will become a stronger writer and your attitude will change. You're going to have a different view of writing by the end of the year. I'm going to make a promise, and then I'll talk to you at the end of the year and see if I did it. And yep, now again, 90%, 10% of them are kind of jerks, but that's a whole nother podcast. So just know that you don't need to do everything all at once at the beginning of the year. You don't have to start with all of this constructed writing business. I do that a ton. Every minute that we are not doing workshop and not doing, novel reading or whatever, they are doing claim evidence reasoning so that they have that skill in their back pocket forever and ever. But you do not want to start with that. You want to start with them in an emotional way and change their mind about the way that they see writing, that they see that they will have an authentic audience. It's not just about the grade. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Be sure to follow Beyond the Paragraph wherever you get your podcast and share this with a teacher bestie. They will love you for it, and so will I. To go deeper and learn more about the structured writing method, go to structuredwritingteacher.com.